Hey, welcome to Beyond Organic Wine. I'm Adam Huss. Thanks so much for listening. That opening and the closing music for this podcast features multiple members of my community, including the very talented Colton Pro. Free episodes like this one are possible because of the support of subscribers to the Beyond Organic Wine Substack. Thank you to those of you who support. I really appreciate it and couldn't do it without you. And if you want to support Beyond Organic Wine, you can easily become a free or paid subscriber at beyondorganicwine.substack.com. But also, sharing these episodes, leaving a review, and just telling somebody is a really valuable way to support Beyond Organic Wine as well. So thank you so much. This episode features Adam Rack, the co-founder of Revino, the company that is taking the lead in glass bottle reuse in the U.S. Based in Oregon, Revino has recently received funding to open a bottle reuse facility in California and is helping to build reuse infrastructure in both states and thinking globally about the glass bottle ecosystem for wine producers and consumers. Revino has signature, elegant, embossed bottles already in use by quite a few Oregon wine producers, and I've had some delicious wine poured from several of their bottles. Bringing awareness and support to wine bottle reuse has been important to me for years, and this isn't the first episode I've done on the topic. That's because the use of new glass bottles is the single largest source of carbon emissions for the wine industry. Yet we know glass is a vital part of wine. If we want to avoid plastic and the limitations of cans, glass is pretty much inescapable. It has amazing qualities of non-reactivity and durability and beauty. That's why reuse has to be the way forward for a sustainable wine culture built on ecological principles. We take some time to get to the specifics about what Revino does, so definitely stay through to the end. It's full of amazing stuff. And I began to realize this was because, as Adam helps us to see clearly, to get to the actual part where we actually reuse glass bottles, many systems have to be established first. Bottle drop-off and collection sites, washing facilities, transportation systems, laws must at times be changed or established or adjusted. And then there are the bottles themselves. Standardization must be adopted. Label adhesives must be made washable. And everyone needs to be educated about these processes, as well as the enormous benefits that make these changes not only worthwhile, but urgent. First, and maybe most importantly, we need to begin a mindset shift away from seeing wine bottles as single-use disposables to cherishing them for their unique qualities, not the least of which is their incredible ability to be reused many, many times. We will need to shift away from valuing pretty, shiny new bottles to taking pride in scuffed and worn bottles with what Adam calls an environmental halo of wear from being part of a reuse ecosystem. These are changes we can start at our wineries today, and Adam gives practical steps to begin to prepare for bottle reuse at your winery, even if the infrastructure won't be available for you for a few years. And compromises are necessary. We can't have everything we want if we want important change to happen, but we can change what we want. These changes take time, and they remind us that we are building the infrastructure for the wine culture that future generations will see as normal. We are transitioning outdated values to the values that will be the cultural foundation for new wine lovers in years to come. This conversation gave me not only practical ideas and resources, but hope that my individual actions are important to a better future in wine. Enjoy. Adam, welcome. Thank you for doing this. Thanks for coming on Beyond Organic Wine.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Adam. Always,
Let's differentiate ourselves. Who are
yes.
you? What is your name and what do you do?
My name is Adam Rack. I'm one of the co-founders of a little company called Revino Bottles, and we launched back in 2022 to revive the reusable wine bottle, glass packaging ecosystem. So
I love that you said revive.
yeah,
Why did you say revive?
I mean, this is something that is not new. We are not bringing a new concept to the market. If you look globally, it's already happening. Here in the U.S., we had bottle reuse, pretty common all the way up until the 80s. Post plastic is when it really started to decline, and the use of single-use containers started to increase. And then we hit the 80s, and we were told to go recycle and that'll solve all of our problems, but um, needless to say, it has not. And for glass packaging in particular, glass is something that can be reused over and over and over and over. We keep glassware in our house, we look through our windows every day, but we still throw away the bottles that are in perfect condition after they're used and filled with wine once. We're used to throwing those away now. So we are here to bring it back to the U.S.
That's amazing. So what, I mean, why is it important? Like, why not recycle?
Yeah, I mean this is a yes and problem. Is like how I like to say
We
it.
should recycle, yes.
Yeah,
But
we shouldn't
also,
stop. So glass is a unique material, right? It's this inert, beautiful thing. It doesn't shed microplastics. There's no liners. The product that's inside it can't eat through like it can with plastics or aluminum cans, um, and it doesn't degrade. So it's this perfect material
yeah.
to
You're
reuse.
not getting leaching into the liquid, for example,
No,
like with, right? Yeah.
it's beautiful, yeah. But it's heavy. It's brittle, and there aren't that many factories anymore here in the U.S. We're down to I think below 20. Don't quote me exactly on that, but glass factories have continued to close year over year because of partially this transition to single use, competitive overseas imports. So we're actually shipping these heavy containers empty further distances to the places where they're used and consumed and filled, and then we have to grind them back up. And the further you have to go to get back to a recycling facility, I mean, once you're much further away than 75, 100 miles, it starts to become an economic issue. Like, how can you balance out shipping this? You crush it. When you crush it, you're shattering glass, and now there's silica shards everywhere. So you have to transport it nicely. You have to take care of it, and you have to ship it all the way to a glass factory. And as those glass factories, or let's say even downcycling it to something like fiberglass, as those become further and further away, the benefits of recycling become lower, especially when you can just get more sand locally or other materials to make brand new glass with virgin material instead of recycled content. So the further you do have to ship glass, the less feasible it is to recycle it.
You know, I don't know why, but this scene from Harry Potter is going through my head where they fight in the Ministry of Magic and Voldemort like launches a bunch of shards of glass at them and then they turn to dust like sand at the end because they're
Yeah,
protected by.
and then I'll
Do you remember
kind of
that?
float down to the fall down to the earth really quick. Yes, I can picture that.
So what you're saying is they then breathed in a whole bunch of silica dust that was probably not good for them at that point, even though
I don't know
they
how
weren't speared by the
I don't know how
shards.
the magic works. I can tell you how grinding it works, but hopefully it's in large enough shards that you're being nice to the people around you. But I don't think he cares.
I mean, a lot of energy goes into this if you don't have magic is probably a better way to segue into the reality of this.
Yes.
There's and I mean, can you talk about that? I mean, like obviously when you're shipping recyclable containers hundreds or thousands of miles, or I don't know how far you have to go to a recycling plant, it'd be really interesting to know how many recycling plants there are versus how many, kilns there are, glass kilns there are.
Yeah, I mean, it is a tough market to be in, and that's just the recycling aspect. I think you mentioned
It's
the
really not incentivized in some parts of the US as
correct.
well. I mean, that's,
Um,
yeah.
there's some really great data that came out from a feasibility study in the Finger Lakes. So New York State gave some money to a university up there and a consultant to figure out, hey, that we have some wineries that are interested in reusing bottles. Let's take a look at the glass market. And there's, a glass manufacturer in Elmira, or it's right in the center of the state, Corning, New York, and
Yeah.
glass from Buffalo, just 60 minutes away, doesn't get recycled most of the time. So that's the reality. And then once it gets to that furnace, you have to also think, oh, now I'm melting this sand at thousands of hundreds of degrees to turn it back into this bottle. So it's one of those heavy consumers of natural gas, and
Right.
there are some furnaces that are these new modern electric furnaces. But as we have more electricity demand from things like AI, electric rates are going up like crazy. So uh, we're still using some of the, I think the most recent thing I heard was like, oh, we're going to keep some more of these coal power plants online, even though coal's really not cost effective anymore. So the more power demand there is, the harder it is to wean off of natural gas. And
Mm.
some of these new facilities that were promised, they're not really coming to fruition anymore. I know there's a really cool technology on the East Coast in Kentucky that was coming out that was supposed to reduce our carbon footprint on glass packaging just by a crazy amount. And it was supposed to be this hybrid model. But at the end of the day, they shut it down after a while. The efficiencies weren't there, and it's getting turned into a normal glass furnace, traditional. So that's the unfortunate part is we've been making glass for 100 plus years. And we used to treat these bottles as these cherished products until they became these single use things. And and part of this is you look at um, I totally lost track of where I was thinking. Sorry about that.
No, no, no.
But
Well,
it's
I mean, I go ahead. I mean, if you have something to say, but I was going to
no,
say
go
it's
ahead.
like, yeah, I love that thought. I mean, that's what I always think too. Is like we used to cherish glass. Like, I mean, the skill and the energy involved in creating a glass product, and the fact that it is so durable, made it this really special thing that we did not take for granted, and we didn't think
Yeah,
of as just like, oh, let's like dump it out, throw it in the bin. You know, it's like it was like, oh, we treasured these things, we washed them out, we reused them, like as much as possible. I mean, and I think if you had a reuse system, I mean, the other thing that I was thinking about, and maybe you can speak to this, is the furnaces that we currently make glass with just run all the time. Like, so we have a
yeah.
3,000 degree furnace that's always on, because to get it up to that temperature takes more energy than just leaving it on. And so we're incentivized to just keep these things flowing and running. Whereas if the demand for glass dropped to a certain point where, because we were reusing a significant portion of it, we could make new glass in a batch and then turn off the furnace. Like you could make glass for a quarter of the year, and then the 3 quarters of the year the furnace could be off, and we just use all that glass that we had just created in that 1 quarter of the year. I don't know, these are just thoughts that I had, but maybe you can talk a little more intelligently about that.
Yeah, I mean, we see reuse as a really beneficial part of the supply chain. I mean, 2020, the pandemic and all these supply chain issues and disruptions that came with that, we had a huge spike in demand for consumer packaging. So small things that consumers could buy at the grocery store, which meant more
Yeah.
glass packaging. Now there's this crazy demand. And so during those periods of time, things operate and it's great and everyone's happy. But then when demand contracts just a little bit, then you're right. We do shut down more furnaces. We have to, and those cost tens of millions of dollars to start back up again,
Mm.
because things solidify and the brick inside, the linings need to be repaired or replaced.
Oh,
So it's
wow.
so we can think about it. We're never going to get to that point, unfortunately, where all glass is just reused all the time. There's always going to be some breakage. There's always going to be a need for single use containers or things that just make their way, and they are reusable inherently, like glassware. So the idea with this, if we look at it as a societal shift, if we can take advantage of those times in the down market, let's look 10 years from now. If we get to this point where the industry, the wine industry, the other beverages, beer bottles, are using glass and reusing it regularly, then you just have to think about managing what's called like a pooled model. So there's this float of glass out there. Let's say a million bottles. There's going to be way more than that, but we already have a billion bottles out there. Uh, but if you have a million bottles, then you just have to say, okay, well, how many of those come back every year? Which ones go to markets or are shipped outside of the United States? So some of them just get damaged or broken. So okay, 10% of those don't come back in a system every year. So 10% you can reliably replace, and you have to replace that. So that's ongoing need. and then market changes, that goes up and down. We have to adapt to that. So we might have to make more, make less. And then you look at the down markets. So let's say we have a bad year and these bottles start looking a little rugged, ratty after, 7, 10, 15 uses. If you go to Germany and Austria, where they have these super long lived programs, those beer bottles are getting used 40, 50 times. And they just replace them because they look worn down. So they kind of hit this wear where they're just like, they've done their work. Let's make new ones. Let's kick them out of the system. But if you think 10 years from now, some of these bottles get used 7, 10, 12, 15 times. And in wine or some other beverage sectors, we might not have as much of a willingness to use ugly bottles. So during those downturn markets, instead of turning a furnace off or shutting it down, maybe we replace more of the stock of that float pool. So more bottles look nice all of a sudden. And it's great for the companies that run the glass factories because they get to keep their furnaces going. And then on the other side, the float pool of reusable packaging kind of gets refreshed at a cheap price because they need to keep making glass. This big entity needs more glass, so it's a opportunistic time to replace some of those bottles instead of constantly making more bottles every single year for every single bottling of wine.
Well, we should talk about what Revino does. So you are a bottle reuse program for wine, as well as I mean, I should let you say what you are, but I mean, I know about the wine thing that you're doing a bit. So, but please introduce what you do because I want to ask some questions based on what you just said about how that applies to you.
Yeah. So, like I said, ecosystem developer. So, when we have to think about how to make reuse happen, it's not just, it can be as simple as like what we do every day at home or at a restaurant where you're just taking a carafe and you're washing it again. But when you look at wine in particular, or any consumer packaged good, you have to think, okay, it needs a label, it needs capsules and corks, and those go out to the market. So, you have to figure out how to get them back. So, we went to the table with about 70, 75 brands to design a standardized bottle. So that way, when you look at the grocery store shelf now, and there's hundreds of different sizes and shapes, and even different manufacturers have different bottles, that just doesn't, it's not viable to reuse all of those because there's too many variations.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to the table with a whole bunch of wineries and said, we know we're all kind of thinking about reuse, the folks that at least responded to us at first. And how do we get there? Well, the way we get there is by kind of collaboratively building this. So we work with the wineries to design a standardized bottle they would actually want to use. So it has to be elegant. I heard that 100 times. It has to be elegant. It has to be somewhat lightweight. So that way, if it does escape, it's not going to be a really expensive, heavy bottle that is a loss to the system. So our
Right.
bottles are about 495 grams, which is a
That's
little bit heavier than a light one, but much lighter than a lot of them still.
yeah. Oh yeah. No, under 500, I would say you're in the that lower tier at
Yeah,
least.
and
That's
it's
great.
sturdy enough to reuse.
Right. Right.
And then we have to think labels. So the wineries are using these bottles; they all become return sites. So now, how do we get the bottles back? Well, all those wineries are pouring on site. They've got wine clubs; their club members bring them back. We also have some retail return partners. So we have actually a chain up here in Oregon is going to be starting in May, a grocery chain. So those are return sites where people can bring those bottles back. And then restaurants, can we start working with distributors to bring those back through our system? And we have two distribution partners here who are getting that off the ground this year. And then when those bottles come back, we have to think, okay, how can we wash these? Well, adhesives have gotten incredibly strong. You really have to kind of burn some of them off.
Yeah.
Uh, so we had to go back to the market, and one of our team members, Kaylee, has actually been working in a reusable beer bottle program up here in Oregon with label manufacturers to bring more of these wash off adhesives to the market in the United States. They exist globally. They used to exist here until a very short time ago. They were made for the sort of scrapbooking market where people would soak the labels off. So those labels still exist, and we're bringing new ones to the market with a bunch of label and adhesive manufacturers. So wineries have to use those in order for the labels to come off in the wash process. And then we also have to figure out how we get them back. So we work with distributors to sell those back to the wineries. We create new cardboard boxes. Hopefully, we can replace those with crates in the long run. But everything kind of comes together in this big web of people that all see the benefits of doing this long term, and they all see this is a long term process. Like, nobody that is partnering with us now expects everything to be reused in 10 in a year, because that's just not the reality. We barely recycle 31% of glass here in the US. So, like,
Right.
we're not going to reuse 90% of our bottles anytime soon. um, so there's a lot of education that comes with it as well. So we kind of have to work with everybody in the supply
That's a really
chain,
good
from
point.
retail to the wineries themselves. And then we also do our own educational outreach.
And even with some podcasters, apparently.
Yeah, happy to share it with anybody who wants to listen.
No, I mean that's honestly why I want to do this. I mean, I know that education is part of this, and I believe in it very strongly. I know, I mean, from what I've seen, the benefits, the statistics that I hear, it seems like a really worthy and important uh, project to support for anybody. And you're based in Oregon. I don't know if we said that yet. Um,
No, yeah, yeah,
so
we're
you're
based
based so you're based
based
in
in
Oregon. So you're
Willamette.
working. You've reached out to a lot of Oregon wine producers, and I've seen the bottles. The bottles are lovely, and they have a cool little, like, it's not like an embossing like Chateauneuf de Pop, but it's got like a little feature, like, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the Star Trek insignia if you
It
overlaid
does.
it on the neck of a bottle.
That's a new
um,
one.
but not like, on the front. It like like wraps around the neck of the bottle and the shoulder of the bottle. And so I guess I have many questions about this, but the simple ones are, the bottles I saw looked in pretty good condition. um I mean, I know things are new about this, but have you had to recall anything because it's been worn so much? Like, do you have a set thing? Do you find people caring? Like, have you had producers say, "Hey, I got some of your glass and it looks a little too dingy for me to use"? Like, do you have a policy about that or program about that?
No, not yet. I mean, so we are at the start of this, and the both the frustrating part and the nice part is wine is a slow moving product. A lot of people
Right.
bottled for the first time in 2024. Some of those wines haven't been released yet. So this is a project that a lot of our winery partners came to the table with, and they kind of you have to commit for a few years to even see it start to work. Um,
Right.
so we've really just got the bottles out in 2024. We started seeing some trickle out to the market, but most of those weren't released until 2025. And then we started ramping up collections last year. And we have started washing, very small scale. We have our bigger unit that's waiting for its permanent home and setup, but we have a small scale washer that is able to process and run these through. And you will start to see the first bottles going back out to the cycle. And once again, they get bottled and then they sit in a warehouse for a while. So, but you'll start to see some of those hit the market in May or June this year. And that's we think about, like, the this is going to take some time before they get all scratched up and ugly. And we'll have to let the market demand control that a little bit. So
Yeah.
we know we'll have to prepare for that. But we also know
Well,
that bottles make it through three, four, five, six times before they actually look dingy. So
and
we're a
I
few
would
years away.
say, yeah, 3, 4, 5, 6 times might give you just enough like on ramp for educating people to normalize dingy bottles. You know what I mean? You know what I'm
That's
talking about? Like
yeah.
when are we going to start as a society valuing rather than devaluing these things that are like badges of doing the right thing? You know, like the fact that it's got scratches on it means it's been part of a reuse program, which means you are participating in this virtuous cycle that reduces the carbon footprint and makes the world better for everybody. When are we going to start normalizing that and handmade clothes and all the things like that? You know what I mean? Like, or reusing clothes, like Goodwill or
Yeah.
Salvation Army purchased outfits. You know what I mean? Like, it feels really similar to me. And like, the more that we can sort of look down on people who demand the big, heavy, pristine bottle. I mean, in the same way that I think it's already in wine starting to become this thing where we look down on people who demand big, heavy bottles as like
Yes.
ego status symbols. I think people who demand perfect looking glass, we should start looking down. You know what I mean? Like maybe that can be part of the PR campaign. We need a good like
You're talking my language. So we
anyway.
call that, when you see these programs that are successful globally, um, instead of saying they're dingy and covered in wear, we call that the environmental halo.
Yeah.
So because
There we
there's
go.
a little raised areas where the label goes, and so there will be areas that tend to wear a little bit more, and same
Right.
with the bottles do say reusable or refillable along the heel. So
That's
as
right.
those
That's
go
right.
through the market, that raised embossing will start to be the component that's damaged more,
Oh, and
so
it'll
they
probably
stand
be
out.
more visible too
Yeah,
because of that, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
So
nice.
this is part of the long-term strategy. You're talking my language, but I think we're seeing some of that now. I mean, we get invited to come speak at colleges, or we try to engage with a lot of the younger generation, because they're the people that are taking over this industry. They're the ones who are leading. They're the people that we are trying to get to drink wine again, and to really come to the table and kind of understand it as this very natural product. Uh, and they get it. It takes it's really interesting, because the older generations that are still out there, they remember the milkman. They have a really
Right.
nostalgic thought about reusing glass bottles or Coke bottles. So on the older end of the purchasing spectrum, don't take any offense, listeners out there. Uh, but we have folks on both sides who kind of get this. The older folks just remember it from their youth, and then the younger folks actually kind of just are demanding better. They're demanding that we use less material. They want to see companies commit to things like this, to see improving the world, improving the environment, and they have been building this into, I spoke with an entrepreneurship class, and they built this into their business model before they even heard about Revino. And this was in my college
Oh,
in Kansas. So
damn.
this is in the zeitgeist for the next
Fantastic.
generation. And we also want to see this as kind of a generational shift. Some people aren't going to change their behavior, but just like smoking, wearing seatbelts, like you get people to do it and behave like that early on, and then it
Right.
becomes norm for them.
Right. Yeah, especially if the infrastructure is set up so that they can do it as part of their life without without like this extreme, like we got to drive 25 miles one direction to return bottles or whatever it is.
Yep.
I mean, I'm just gonna say, I one of my dream like retirement jobs is gonna be as a wine man.
Wine
Like
man, can you
wine
explain?
man, just like the milkman, but I'm gonna be the wine man. I'm gonna come
Oh, that
around to
sounds lovely.
I'm gonna walk down through through people's neighborhoods, apartment doorsteps. There will be bottles sitting out, and I'll replace them. I'll have fresh bottles of wine to put into your little rack there, and take the old bottles that you reused that week.
I
I
don't want
come
to
once a week.
I don't want to squash your dreams, but don't tell the TTB that you're doing this.
Well, it'll be a subscription. It'll be like it'll be like a
Perfect.
wine
Yeah.
club. It'll be like a
Someone has
wine
to
club.
sign for it. Yeah, yeah. There
Yeah,
we go.
yeah.
They'll want to see you. They'll want to be there.
That's right. No, this is like this is legit. This is you're signed up through a licensed wine club situation.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
Yeah.
and that's, speaking about infrastructure, that is one of those missing pieces. I really
Yeah.
believe that if wash equipment were still here, it's hard to get these big things. They're all
Mhm.
made in Europe.
Uh-huh.
Um, if we had more equipment, we know there's been interest in Napa. There was another group that was trying this within the last 5 years. And in 2024, she actually kind of passed the torch. She got some laws changed in California. She laid the groundwork for it with a group called Conscious Container. But the missing piece was still that infrastructure, and it was getting people to fund it. And that's where the missing piece is. So we have to look at, as we develop these systems, how do we get that convenience that you talked about?
Yeah.
It's leveraging what's out there first, because we don't have the cash to shell out for a brand new. This isn't just Revino. This is any company that's trying to do better or trying to reuse materials. We don't have the cash to justify like brand new return sites all over the country at a moment's notice and expanding that to so many locations. But we can look at the wineries. Like there's already more brick and mortar return sites in Oregon because we have the wineries participating. They're part of the returns. They take them back and they get foot traffic from it. So it's a benefit. It's a win-win for them. Uh, and then, distributors, they're already driving vehicles every day and dropping off
Right.
things, and then those vehicles come
Yes.
back empty every day. Can we tap into those empty trucks, empty vans, and just say let's fill them back up with one case at a time to start with, two, three, four, until maybe at some point it becomes a burden. But we also hope that we can incentivize them to do this
Right.
through various methods.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, no, so that reminds me, I have a couple things. My mind is going everywhere now, but you, I mean, we had a little bit of that happening in LA for a while. You probably are more up to breast. I don't know if you can speak to what's happening on the rest of the West Coast, but it sounds like you've you are have been involved, had conversations with the Southern California, Northern California folks who were involved in bottle reuse, and maybe can kind of tell us what's the state of the West Coast at this point with reuse.
Yeah. And you actually, I believe you interviewed, was it
I did.
Emily and both of them?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I actually texted Emily just a few weeks ago and haven't got a response. Last I heard, we did check in mid last summer and things were still going with they're just doing bottled water at a kind of a small scale with some private clients at this point. And part of that is because the labels were so hard with the wine side. Um,
Oh,
and
yeah.
yeah, taking those off is difficult. Uh, and we had some options for them on the market, but the water project was going well enough that they were at capacity, and I know they were looking for expansion with new infrastructure. They needed a new washer, just like we need more washers. So we're very excited to kind of see some of these systems getting tried, and because we learn every time someone fails, every time we fail at something, we're going to learn and improve and go at it a different way. And they've got a totally different market set up. Water is questionable if we should be buying bottled water all the time anyway, but it is a part of the. Uh, I'll skip over that part. It's convenience. It's always going to exist, but it's an important thing to focus on, and it's much easier because you don't have the labels necessarily. If you're screen printed bottles, you don't have to deal with a lot of those difficult. But
Nice.
yeah. It's I mean, a lot of these problems could be fixed with more infrastructure, but we have to look at these problems one at a time. And I know California's done some interesting work there. I believe you can go into any like fast food place and they're supposed to fill you water for free. Is that true?
Oh, I mean,
I think it was a law.
I think it's real easy to, if you just say like, "Hey, I brought my own cup." They have those water dispenser out where everybody
Yeah,
can, usually everywhere.
that's such a
Not that
such
I
a
go
small
into.
change, right? It's like,
Yeah.
and could it reduce X million more bottles if more people knew about it? I think it could. Uh, But
All right,
but
so
for us,
we
it's
were in
yeah,
California. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so Northern California had its own thing going on, and please
multiple
say what
times.
happened with that.
Yeah, so back in I think 2008, I'm gonna get the dates wrong, but 2008, 2012, that there was like a 3 or 4 year period where a group called Wine Bottle Renew was around, and there was another project in like Southern Oregon around the same time, Northern California, Southern Oregon, that was called the Rinse Project. Uh, haven't been able to find much data on that, but I know Cowhorn Winery was involved back when that was going on. I had a conversation with the former owners, and they were like, "Yeah, it went pretty well at the time, but like I think the people just retired or shut down." Um, so so that project in the 2008 to 2012 kind of range never did focus on the standardized packaging. So they had the sorting issue to where you say, okay, let's bring in all these bottles. And now you have 14 different Hawk bottles, two or three different colors. You have cork and screw cap. And then you also have Burgundy, you have, Claret or slash Bordeaux, and you have sparkling. And you have to do a lot of sorting. And they had some equipment for that would help, but it was still quite a heavy lift to do all of that sorting. And then they bought bottle washing equipment from the United States, and there was a lawsuit because it didn't quite work as expected, from what I understand. And well, we don't have a history of making a ton of bottle washing equipment here, so that is one of those things that was unfortunate. But they did have around 300 wineries that were engaged and working on it or working with them in some way. But that kind of petered out with the equipment failure. So in somewhere around 2019, 2020, her name was Karen McNamara with a Conscious Container came around. And
That's right.
yeah, she was really focused initially, I believe, on more the beer space. So she had some support from the beer industry. Because there's at the time, there's still some of those brands that were really into bottles. They didn't transition to cans yet, and had some initial support there, had some good progress, got a small scale bottle washer, but unfortunately there's a ton of regulation that had to change. So in California, under the CRV program, you can't pay that CRV back, that deposit, that bottle deposit, without crushing the bottle. So you have to destroy the label, the part that it says CRV, return for 10 cents.
Ah,
So Karen worked to change that law, along with a whole bunch of other people that really saw that being one of those barriers to reuse at scale. And then with the most recent updates to the bottle bill in California, wine became a part of it. So now it was even more important for a company like us or like Conscious Container to come back to the table and be like, okay, now we really have to understand how to integrate returns into this deposit network, because there's infrastructure, albeit not convenient for everyone, still not as much out there as like this direct to tasting room model, but it is growing. The California is building on that infrastructure again, and it's really trying to expand it. So we have to figure out, how do we eventually get into that system, because that's where people volume comes through the system, and reuse
right.
really works best when you're across the market, you're in a lot of spaces, and you can be very flexible about who reuses the bottles. You have to transport less. You have higher volume, so there's more efficiencies when you're washing. The cost of the glass comes down because you're producing more of those wash off labels and the bottles. So it's kind of like she spent a long time just laying the groundwork, just getting the law changed to where you didn't have to destroy the bottles if you're going to pay out that deposit. And that's still something that needs to be implemented. We still need to integrate into that system, because it is complicated. There's just a lot of paperwork. It's red tape galore for a reason, I know, but at the same time, it's difficult to start collecting in that system, and we have to think about that in order to scale. So
Yeah.
that groundwork has all been laid, and she was also ready she's nearing retirement. She gave herself 7 years, is what she said, to work on the project, and she'd worked on it 5 years. And at that point, she was like, I'm ready to pass the torch. Uh, so at a Napa Green a summit called Napa Rise, she kind of told the industry, she's like, hey, we know the only reason that this isn't here yet, the reason that we are Ash Contra's container shutting down, is because we didn't have the funding and the pieces weren't in place yet. And well, now the pieces are in place. And this actually comes to a really exciting thing that's happening on our side is we just received a rather sizable grant from CalRecycle that we're still working to sign those final documents on. So knock on wood here, but we received a grant to build a full end-to-end facility down in Southern California to service the wine market down there.
Oh, that's
And
fantastic.
thank
Congratulations. That's
you.
so great.
Yeah, and we'll also be able to integrate into those CRV systems because that's a whole permitting process and all this other all that paperwork I talked about that comes with it. That is a component of this grant. So we will be able to really start diving into what it looks like to scale this through the convenient returns that go back with all the other bottles. And then we just have to start looking at how do we pull them out, which that standardized bottle shape is a part of that.
So yeah, the standardized bottle shape was going to be one of my next questions. Was just this is a major barrier at the moment, right? We kind of have to get people to, again, value something more than something different
The weight, yeah.
than yeah the weight. Then they're trying to stand out with their unique bottle shape or whatever. It's like, yeah, but then there's a huge sacrifice. I mean, can you talk about just to like what is at stake? Like, what is the carbon footprint difference between reuse and new bottles and that kind of stuff? Like, what kind of impact can we actually make by reusing bottles?
Yeah, I mean, high level, all LCAs can be warped to whatever you want, but generally speaking, a lot of data from this about bottle reuse has been performed over and over again in Europe. So these comparisons come out of Europe, where glass manufacturing is much more efficient, smaller distances. So we might have more to gain from reuse here in the U.S., where we do ship so far, and we use
Uh-huh.
heavier bottles, but you see about an 85% emissions reduction, so mostly CO2 when you're looking at LCAs, life cycle analysis.
Wow.
And then, between water savings, you're about 50%, I think 70 to 80% on energy, because there's just so much resources put into the first manufacturing of a glass bottle.
That that's amazing.
So it's
What
it's
what does
significant.
LCA stand for again?
Life cycle analysis. So it
Life
looks
cycle
at,
analysis.
yeah,
Gotcha. Yeah.
what's the impact of a product?
Right.
And historically, we looked at carbon impact, CO2. But now, increasingly, LCAs are starting to include some other variables, like the impact of like health, human health. So if you look at plastics, they perform really well on a lot of LCAs because, well, plastics are lightweight, they're flexible, they're technically recyclable. Um,
Right.
so, if you look at that context, we should be putting all wine in plastic pouches uh, or kegs.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
reality is, like, the product isn't compatible with it, and then you start to look at the human health impacts. And as we learn more about what microplastics really are, and what they do to the environment, or how many there are, the
Yeah.
billions in every sort of washer load of clothes, then you once you start to capture those costs, the societal costs that aren't captured by typical LCAs, then reuse of things like glass or stainless steel, they can really start to be a lot more competitive. And if you're setting fees, let's say like incentives or penalties at a government level on things that are more difficult to recycle or more toxic to the environment because of the chemicals used in the production or recycling of those, then you can really start to make an impact. And that's one of those things that we're seeing right now is laws called extended producer responsibility laws, so EPR. And in
Mm,
California, SB 54 was one of those laws.
okay.
Washington, Oregon, like 7 or 8 states have passed these laws, and they are incentivizing people to use lighter weight materials, to use more recyclable materials. And some of those states look into human health too. Um, so we hope that this is a boon for reuse of glass and just more human healthy materials as well.
Well, when you hear some of those statistics, I just don't know how we could move forward without considering reuse as a really important part of, just any kind of consumption of anything that
100%.
comes in a liquid form. Yeah, it
Yeah,
just
and
seems.
if you look at it just from a winery perspective, we have a lot of wineries like Jackson Family or Louis Vuitton. The labels under that brand. These companies have made commitments to become carbon neutral or even carbon positive by 2050. That's right around the corner in
Yeah,
some ways, and the glass packaging in particular, or just packaging. You think about the cardboard, altogether. Um, Wineries have started doing these LCAs, these analysis, and many of them, and I'm sure you've heard a lot of these statistics on the podcast already, but um, some of them, 40%, 42% is one specific brand, um, larger brand. 42% of their emissions come from the glass and that packaging, like transporting the
yeah,
packaging.
yeah,
So when you say how are you going to become positive carbon positive, well, if half of it's just stuck in the bottle, you can do
yeah,
all the other work. You can go carbon neutral. You can go all electric on your. You can stop
yep,
spraying everything. You can stop using tractors. That's not going to get you even barely halfway.
yeah.
Uh, so do you turn the lights off in the facility and just go dark? That's the way to go. Is
Still
go
wouldn't get
carbon
you there.
zero. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's right. No, it's true. I mean, yeah, it's and you know who needs all that water and that electricity that we'll be saving, right? AI. Sorry. Anyway,
They're going to
that
solve
was
all of
just
our problems, right?
that was my cynical aside. Anyway,
Yeah, we can go down that all day, but it's beautiful outside, so I want to be positive.
um, I mean, I, be, I guess my next question is, what can we in wine do to help, other than change our mind about the way that we look at a bottle, the way that we think about the kind of labels that we want, to become aware of the need to standardize, to use an adhesive that is easy to remove, even though that means, like, great, if you stick your wine bottle in an ice cooler, it might rub off a little easier. I'm sorry. But guess what? The upside is it makes reuse a lot easier, and that's really important. Any
Yeah,
besides those kind of things, like besides like needing to understand that like it's okay to have one or two standard bottle shapes, that like
yeah.
everybody uses
Most
because your
most
label's
consumers don't.
different.
Most
Yeah,
consumers
your
don't notice either.
right,
That's
exactly.
the
Right. They're looking at
funny thing.
labels. Yeah. I mean, if you go into a grocery store aisle or a wine shop of any kind, it all looks the same anyway, people. Like it really does. Just like there just isn't that much difference. So like your little, tweak to the bottle and this and that and like having 500, extra grams in your bottle to make it look heavy and feel like, you know, something people can work out with rather than drink. Like it doesn't matter. Like when you look, if you're walking down a shelf,
Yeah,
an
it's
aisle,
the
like, and
label itself
yeah,
that people are drawn to more than anything. And I'll say marketing is one of those things that is the holdup quite often.
so
It's
that's a
it's
big one.
really.
Okay, so marketing is a big one. Okay.
Yeah, and maybe not the marketing teams necessarily, because they also see the benefits from this, right? The marketing teams are like, well, this is an ecological gold mine. This is a sustainability branded gold mine for some of those teams. Um,
Right.
but on the other side, it's just this like hesitation, fear of the unknown, or you're afraid to be a leader or do something different. And we're in a unique time in the industry, and we've really tried to lean into the non just sustainability reasons to do this, because costs are a real thing. So we go back to like these heavy bottles. those heavy bottles cost more than our bottles most of the time. So
Right.
right away, you might have an economic savings to switch to the reusables, the
Yeah.
standardized bottles. Um,
Well,
for the
especially if you have to pay for shipping them around, like it
Yeah,
definitely makes a difference, you know.
yeah,
I
when
mean, I
you
think
look at your
that's
whole supply chain.
yeah, I think that was like Topless Creek had that whole thing where they switched to lighter bottles and they realized how much money they were saving just in shipping, you know.
Yeah,
And yeah,
and
anyway.
some of this is already changing too. We've tried to push towards lightweight for 15 years. The industry has. We're finally getting there. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but even at that same time, some of the conversations I have with especially some of the higher end brands are, well, we just lightweighted, so like we want to wait and see. And my question is, well, what? Oh, okay, so you're using like the eco bottles, like 467 grams. That's my uh, concept of lightweight, but they'll say, no, we went from 900 grams to 700 grams. That's still a heavy bottle.
Yeah.
So
Moving in the right direction, but
yeah, it's
it's still a long way to go.
commendable for
Yeah.
sure, but
Right,
it's
right.
it's still just this like, "Ooh, we didn't want to go lighter because we're worried our customers won't think it's worth anything anymore, or they'll our reputation will be different." And I've had enough of these conversations with brands, and all across the spectrum from $10 to $300. And what comes up repeatedly is like someone will do a change. There was a brand here in the Willamette Valley, very small boutique label, that's sold to a new owner, and the new owner absorbed the wine club. They also started a second label because this winery was very, their wine club average age was like 75. They got rid of their capsules during the pandemic because they could not purchase capsules, the little
Right.
foil on top.
Yep. Yep.
And they had some of these conversations that were like, oh, the wine's not going to be fresh anymore, and once they got that message out, they looked at their packaging for the following year, and they started to order their capsules because they were in stock again, and they were like, wait, why are we doing this? Like, why are we
Yeah.
spending the money again when we just told everyone like it's not necessary, it's not an important part of it, and we didn't lose any wine club members. And then
Yeah.
with the weight, a lot of wineries are shifting to lighter weight because of the cost of glass. Lighter weight costs less. And at the same time, they're shifting to less variation in bottles. So you're
Yep.
seeing more standardization or simplification just due to what's available on the market at what price point.
Right.
And you end up saving money. Like you end up saving a
Right.
lot of money.
Yeah.
And once again, there's just like build on these more and more benefits here. When you don't have six different bottles, you're just bottling in maybe two or three. Now you don't
Oh.
have a whole bunch of extra glass every single time you bottle. You
Oh.
you change a different
So
bottle or
great.
change
Yeah.
to a different label for those
It
brands
makes
that own a
it
lot.
makes the bottling line so much easier too. Like I mean, it saves you
Oh yeah,
time, which is also money. You're not like shifting, and you don't have to like break the whole thing down and reset stuff. Or
yeah.
yeah,
So
there's
some of
so
this is
many.
already happening,
Yeah, that's
and
great.
that's
That is
that's
really
what
great to hear.
we want to hop in on that and say, okay, we're thinking about lightweighting. Let's think about trying to get a marketing benefit from that too.
Yeah.
Because if you're worried about lightweighting, well, one, I can point you to 10 wineries who have prices from low ends to 150 a bottle or 140. I don't know what they're at. Kiona Vineyards is a really good example of this, and he's been very loud about it. JJ up in the Walla Walla area in Washington, he went to the same bottle for his whole lineup, from entry level grocery brand all the way up to his single vineyard, estate products that are high end, bottlings of cab. And they were worried about it, of course, but they had a few emails. Most people didn't respond. And the
Yeah.
people that did get that response when they were like, hey, we got the lighter bottle, is this the one that we ordered, is it the same quality? He was like, well, it's lighter, it's cost you less, we're charging less for the bottle, we didn't have to raise our prices because we're charging less, and you can pour it without your wrist hurting. There's these other benefits, like our staff doesn't have carpal tunnel anymore.
Yeah,
to
from lifting cases that are
the
100-pound
positive
cases.
from the customers is usually very happy. They're usually satisfied with the answers and they get it.
Yeah,
It's
again, Tobless Creek did a. I mean, they're just really smart about it. They went out with a survey to their. They were
yeah,
like, "How do you guys feel if we do this? We're considering this change. What how would you feel about that?" And it was like overwhelming. Like they're doing this because they're prepared for the worst, and the response was the exact opposite. Like, we would love this. This sounds great. Please
yeah,
do it. Like it's like, yeah, why wouldn't you do that?
and
Stuff like that.
that's the same we've seen from a lot of our brands. So it is just the courage to and the other time in difficult times like this, when we're having a little bit of a market shift or correction, the thing that a lot of people want to do, especially the smaller overworked brands that don't have big teams, and even some of the big brands, you just kind of like shrink and you don't want to change anything because you're afraid it's not going to improve or it's gonna get worse. But all the data, like every recession, we have this data from every time we have a market downturn of any kind. The people who innovate and aren't afraid to like cut what's not working, cut the slack, and start something new over and over and over, those are the people who come out ahead. And
Yeah,
we really see reuse as one of these opportunities because it is so engaging to consumers to say like, hey, this bottle looks a little different. One, people love the bottle. Even the brands that are concerned about it at first, once it's in hand and they put the label on. We have very few customers, and we still have some that don't like it, and that'll always be true. But very few of our winery partners come to the table afterwards and say like, this is ugly. They actually like it, and they like that it's not plain. It's not a plain bottle. So this is the first time that you've actually been able to say, okay, well, lightweight might be an example, but lightweight is just a lighter bottle. It still looks like every other bottle on the grocery store shelf, unless
right.
you're making that communication to the customers that like it is a lighter bottle and this is why we did it or these are the benefits. But with these bottles, they literally say reusable. Like they say, do something else. Think about it. Think about the impact that we as a brand are choosing to do this to improve our world together. And you can be a part of it. No other packaging does that in the same way. It might say recycle me, uh, but no other packaging is engaging in a way that like really brings you in and like encourage invites the customer to learn more about reuse, learn more about the bottle and what the winery is choosing to do, why they chose to talk about the packaging, which historically is not something we talk about. We talk about, maybe how beautiful the vineyard is or, the sustainability work we did in the winery. But all of that is, unless you're on the property, like looking at vines, and even looking at vines, you're not going to understand. You don't get that not spraying something there's no like feeling attached to it. You can understand that, oh, they didn't spray something, but you can't like feel it, tactile. You can't
Yeah.
grab the fact that you are sustainably farming. It's just a vibe, basically.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, sometimes you could taste it. I would argue, but
Yeah,
the
yeah, but it's
potential
it's
exists.
like for that one consumer to be able to compare side by side too. Like even sommeliers can have
Yes,
have
yes.
to dive in really
No,
deep
it's
and
true.
train
I
their
mean,
palates.
right. And I don't mean to take anything away from what you're saying. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's great. I mean, look, I mean, this is, you know, Jancis Robinson refused to review heavy bottled wine that was submitted to her. This is like a thing that
Yeah,
she continues with now to this day. That is such an important statement, and it's beyond like I don't think maybe she doesn't even realize how important that is because what she's saying is, and this is kind of like she's kind of the only reviewer in the world who has done this other than like me that I know of, unless I mean I'm sure there are people who are like out there that, but it's like it's not like a the decontextualize wine in a glass cannot be evaluated for quality. Quality is about the entire interconnected what was the word that you life cycle like the
Like
entire
it's an
interconnected
ecosystem.
life
Like
cycle
it's
of that
yeah,
product is the context that determines that we need to start thinking about what determines the quality of that thing that we're tasting. Taste by itself is a really poor judge of quality because it's so subjective, and we can be so fooled by people who know how to like titillate our palates. And regardless of that, like just once we just say like, you know what, it's important. The weight of the bottle is important. And this is why I don't know if she realizes how important that is. Like a whole cascade of things now, a whole cascade of at least questions like what else should we set a limit, like we will not review unless X is done for this one, because
yeah,
we might start to get to the point where we say like unless you're reusing bottles, like you're, I mean, I know this is cutting out most of the wine world right now, so obviously we're not there yet, and I'm not saying that, but like this is a future that I can foresee. Like this is the beginning of the conversation that is like we need to start taking these things into account when we evaluate what is quality in wine. And I
yeah,
think it's fair. It's fair to say that because like if it is completely unnecessary and it costs the world, then what the hell? Like why are we doing it, and why aren't we insisting on not doing it? Like when we evaluate a wine's quality. Or why aren't we insisting that it gets rated at a lower quality if it continues to do these practices? And of course, this is the Beyond Organic Wine podcast. I'm gonna just put a plug in there that like if you're thinking ecologically, that can create a whole cascade of other things that might come into play beyond just the bottle,
yeah,
but how the wine was made, how it was grown. Like these are really important questions that we can't think of wine as a decontextualized thing. And I'm
yeah.
so yeah. I mean, so anyway,
Well, this is the through line. I think
yeah,
a lot of wineries has been doing this hard work in the vineyards, like in the wineries, cutting out water use. But like the packaging is the thing that kind of not that many people are talking about. You mentioned Tablas Creek, like really sending out bag and box and saying why they're
right,
doing it. And
yeah,
when you talk about it, you're starting that conversation. You're saying something that's very important, and your customers can connect to that. Like, there's only so many times you can hear, and I'm gonna, not to speak down on some of those tasting rooms out there who really are the technical talk, but yeah, I've read this multiple times and I believe it myself. But it's you can go to a tasting room and have this experience and it's beautiful outside and it's just lovely and you just want to hang out and talk with your friends, and then someone comes and tells you about the most tiny little nuance about the winemaking in that year and that vintage and maybe the bricks at harvest, and it's like none of that matters to most people. Most people don't
yeah,
understand it, and
and
it's
most of
all
it
important.
is, oh my god, and most of it is so irrelevant to the actual story of the wine. It's like the winemaking is not the story of the wine. And the other thing that like I almost have to like bite my tongue at times to stop people from doing this because they're just well meaning. They're just tasting room staff, or they're like
Yeah,
restaurant staff, or
yeah,
whatever they are, but they like come out and they tell you the flavors that you're going
yeah,
to taste. And I'm
yeah.
like, you don't know what I'm going to taste,
My tongue is
like,
not your tongue.
yeah, and whoever told you that, like, I mean, I just don't want to be inceptionized by this imagery, whatever it is, whether it's a fruit or a flower or whatever it is. Like, I'm going to have my own experience with this wine, and that's totally valid, and I don't
do you
need
do you
to
plug
be
your ears
guided
and go
through
la la
that.
la 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 la?
Yeah, exactly. I kind of do. I really want to. Oh man. Anyway, yeah,
Next time.
that's yeah. You made me think of something else too. But I think I don't know if we got to this answer, so I'll ask it again. But like because I rambled on and then I
Oh, we've
led
been
you
on a
into
roller
other
coaster.
things.
It's
But
been fun.
I'll just ask it very directly. So, what can those of us in wine do to help this process move forward?
Yeah. I mean, easiest, engage. Like engage with us. Ask your suppliers to do better, to look for these materials. Whether it's if you're not ready to move to reusables, great. Start shifting to wash off labels. Like start testing those. For red wine, they perform pretty much just as well now. There's only a few on the market, but we need more market demand to get those out there. And there is a new adhesive. Reach out to us at Revino and we can connect you. It's in testing right now. It's a Wausau product. We love Wausau as a label manufacturer. But they've been working on this, and multiple other label manufacturers have been working on this with us to create better wash-off adhesives that don't come off in cold water. So you can put them in ice baths. And I will also put a
Nice.
caveat: they don't come off that quickly anyway. If you're waiting like an hour, 2 hours to finish off that bottle, then maybe do expect a little bit of lift off. So start to change expectations. Not
Right.
everything needs to stay on for 24 hours. There's very little use case for that. So start to say, like, I don't need that actively to your suppliers. What else do you not need?
Right.
We've seen capsules being reduced. That's kind of the most popular thing. But, like what other small things can you do to prepare for reuse? And there's a group called Porta Protocol. I don't know if they've come up before on the podcast.
For sure. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, only I haven't interviewed anybody from there yet, but like they've definitely been brought up. Other guests are part of the
and there's
Porto
dozens of
protocol. I'm very
yeah,
aware of them. I
of
think
course.
I've recommended it as a resource, on the podcast before, so I will again. It's a great resource for anybody
Yeah, and
for
and
it,
they've
for all
they've been
kinds of sustainability things, from
100%
farming to
water
packaging to like
usage,
water use, you
packaging. They
name
put
it.
out a great packaging survey study, like 140 pages about all of packaging. Reuse
Yeah.
is a part of it, but kegs, growlers, cans, uh, all the
Especially
way.
if you're in Europe. I mean, obviously the information transcends, but it's Europe
Mhm.
based. A lot of the studies and data comes from European studies, and they're obviously it's called the Porto Protocol. But yeah, I just mentioned that. Like
Well, so
anybody
so they've
listening from Europe,
Yes, yes. They've started to pull together like a reuse group for the wine community. We're kind of circling back with them actually next week to really start talking about like what's the next evolution of that. But they started a reuse ready campaign, and it's
great.
it's a an open letter sign on just to say to the glass industry like, hey, we want to think about reuse long term. But also, here's the things that you can do to start engaging. So you don't have to listen to us. Go listen to Porter Protocol talking about this, but wash off labels, preparing for those or testing them now. Because for some wineries, it might take 4 years for you to just feel confident to use new materials. So start now, because if you're not starting now, you're going to be behind in 4 years.
Yeah.
Uh, so start that now. Reach out to us. If you don't want to use our bottles, we get it. If you want to, or if you think you might in the future, we're trying to pull together kind of a coalition, a collective to talk about this. Hopefully late this summer. Now that we have this work that we're trying to expand down into the California market, we're trying to kind of have a convening of especially the larger brands, the ones who have the most to gain by. I mentioned those EPR conversations. Those first bills went out. Those first invoices for EPR fees went out in the state of Oregon this year. It is not cheap. Um,
Yeah.
Reuse means you don't have to. Once that material's been paid, you don't have to pay again. So like this is an economic savings as well. And if you're once again not thinking about where you are as an industry
Wow.
5 years from now, you're gonna be 2 years behind in your reporting. So you're gonna be paying fees 2 years after you want to start. Um,
Well, so that okay. Let me ask. Let's get into the nitty gritty of that. How this actually works with you. How you're set up. So with your partners, are you saying that they only have to buy glass once, or how does that work? Because obviously there are costs that you incur every time that bottle gets reused, from
yeah.
cleaning. And so first, let me start with, well, okay, I would love to
Oh,
get
we're
that
gonna.
overview of, like, from
Yeah.
the winery side, what are their costs, and then second of all, I think because it might be a question that now is lingering in the back of people's minds, because you brought it up as an issue that came up in the Napa, um, the beginnings of the Napa reuse program. What protocols do you have in place for cleaning and inspection to ensure that, like, when somebody's reusing a wine bottle and putting their, you know, whatever it is, their primo number one estate wine in that they want to age for 10 years, that it's not going to get some microbial spoilage from the bottle.
Yeah.
And then, so that is the second question. Okay, big two-part question for you.
So I'm gonna start with the second part, which
Okay.
is the can we trust bottle washing? A bottle
Yes.
that's dirty and it's been used. This is, like I say, if we look beyond our borders, this is something that is commonplace. They reuse 98% of domestically filled beer bottles in Ontario, Canada.
Okay.
This is super common. Beer's cheaper, so I
Right.
get that. If
Right.
it spoils, great. It's not as big of a cost, but
Yeah. What
they,
about my $500 whatever?
yeah, very, very different risk tolerance. I do understand that. But these washers have been in operation effectively a lot of the time without any sort of third party verification, without any standards, without any testing or inspection afterwards, aside from just like someone looking at the bottle and saying, yeah, that looks good. Usually in front of a light box is how they used to do it. Bottles all go by on a conveyor belt, and you're just like looking for stuff that's left in there. So they hit temperature and time in the sanitizing process. So you end up with just the same as reusing a glassware in the dishwasher at a
Got it.
restaurant. So, but these same systems have effectively looked about the same since the 60s. And
Okay.
there's actually a video floating out there from Bordeaux. And I hope I can find it and you can like link it. I
Oh, that'd
lost
be
it and I
great.
found it and I lost it again. But it's a video from the early 1900s.
Okay.
Um, and it is washing bottles in Bordeaux. And it's this big giant bottle washer, and these people sticking labels in by hand, and they're getting scrubbed off with just brushes, and then they put it in this big bottle washer, and it comes out the other side. It is effectively the same appearance uh, as these bottle washers from 100 years ago. But the technology on the testing side has improved just that much more. The chemicals that we use are very similar to washing a tank in a winery. So if you're following the same cleanliness standards as you should in a winery for filling a tank, think about that being a very similar comparison to, are you confident reusing a bottle? uh, and then the extra layer on that, especially as we look at equipment for this new facility that will be down in Southern California, the level of inspection has just gone so far up over the last 20 years with these inspection units. So they're what's called EBIs, empty bottle inspector or electronic bottle inspection, and it's kind of the same equipment that's used on the manufacturing line, but it has additional items. So it has a lot of them have X-rays, or not X-rays, sorry, metal detectors. So they're looking for any residual metal that's in there, which there rarely is. Um, but if someone shoved a whole thing in there, it's going to boot that right away. It also takes video or images. It'll take, our team member Kaylee calls it a disco tech for the bottles. The bottle goes in, it takes like 30 pictures of the bottle, and it
Okay.
flashes at different areas and directions. And when you flash like that, you can see certain flaws show up, and then it reviews those flaws and it boots bottles. It also looks really closely at the closure area, so the threads on a screw cap or inside the cork or right on the rim of the
Mm,
bottle, to make sure that when you put another closure on top, it seals correctly and that there's no scratches inside. And then will also use infrared, so you can identify. And I might get one of these wrong, but it uses a different light wave, so it can identify organic material that's left over. So it's like way better than people, but at the same time, we've been doing this for decades just with the human eye. The human eye and meeting these temperature and sanitation standards, that the equipment comes, ready to execute. It's super well performing, barely any problems. So we saw this equipment that we've spec'd out in operation in Italy. No one's even paying attention to it. They've been running it for 15 years, since 2006, so 20 years now. They've been running it. they will have someone just kind of watching the bottling line, and they'll pull off anything if they see like a residual label adhesive that's stuck on there. They just pull it off before it goes in the bottler. Very low
Got it.
key, super chill. Um, but we also have new standards out. It's called PR3 initiative. So these are actually global standards for reuse systems, not just bottles, but takeout containers, cups, plates, things at big venues. So there's actually standards that we follow in our practices, and the same with a lot of other wash service providers for reuse materials, like food packaging. Um, we all came to the table with sanitation companies like Ecolab. They were a part of these
Oh
standards.
yeah.
Us, Bold Reuse is in Portland, and they were at the Super Bowl. Cheers to Bold Reuse with cups. And there's all these different entities that are at the table. Manufacturers of packaging were also included, and they sat at the table and said, how do we design effective systems? So making sure that within a wash facility, you've got separation of dirty and clean spaces. There's all sorts of things that you go through, but think about it just like running a winery. You just have to make sure you're doing it right, and you can tell by the end of the product by verifying just what's coming out. And then, what it looks like for a brand to participate. I always want to start with, you get out what you put into it. If you throw your if you use the bottles, great, and then you just kind of throw them out to the world and expect people to engage with them and come back to you and return them, or be excited about it, they're going to be as excited as you are. So just like with the wine, we all have to sell our wine because we all make pretty good wine, and it's about the story. It's about what you're doing and communicating what you're excited about to your customers. Or new varietals, you have to educate on a lot of things in this space. And when you educate on it, people then really engage and they get it. It's exciting. So that's where I start. But what it looks like is we don't operate everywhere. That's the reality yet. We're in Oregon. We work with a few brands in Washington, and then we're doing some pilots with some Napa brands. Um,
And maybe
so
soon in California.
Southern California, yeah, we're already working on
Yeah.
some Napa brands. So,
All
um,
right.
so
What
come
is
to
the
the table.
cost? What is the cost to the winery partners?
Yeah. So our bottles, they start at around $12 a case with content boxes. They might
Okay.
be cheaper if you're ordering 100,000 cases. They might be more expensive if you want your own custom boxes. Uh, but that's about a good ballpark in
Okay.
cases,
And
and that's pretty
um
comparable.
and what bottle choices do people have at the moment?
So right now we have cork and screw cap, uh,
Okay.
burgundy shape, so that classic like Chardonnay Pinot Noir shape, uh,
Okay.
and we have both flint, so clear glass, and antique green.
Okay.
There is a Bordeaux shape in development, but
Okay.
we want to get down to California before we have enough of market share to make that worthwhile. Um, and then there are some other ways to get engaged too. It's if you are using these labels that wash off, we can maybe reclaim the bottles that you have. That's not our long-term vision. It's also, you have to do a lot more work because you're warehousing. You have to think about when you want them again. Uh, but you follow our processes, which we've got a whole toolkit on the website that talks about how you engage with consumers, the messaging behind it. It's not recycling, it's reuse. There's some really big important things to get it across to consumers that this is different, um, and to get them to engage more. And then you become a return location if you have a tasting room. So you actually get to reclaim instead of recycling. You get to reclaim what you have. In areas that are close to where we operate, we actually pick those up at 10 cases at a time, or hopefully you have a whole pallet. And then in those further distant areas, we ask that you keep more of those empty bottles on hand. So more like a pallet or two pallets before it's cost effective to send them back and get them washed. And yeah, I mean, I can keep going for a long time, but I feel like that's the starting place. And there's a lot of these nuanced conversations that we have after the fact. What
Right.
what
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
are you a
Yeah. I want to give
mostly
people
to
the
consumer?
yeah. Right. Sorry. I should let you talk.
No,
Go ahead.
it's yeah. Are you mostly shipping to consumers locally? Do you have events on site? Because then you're way more beneficial. It's a way more upfront beneficial for you to engage in
Oh
this
yeah.
versus a brand that has no tasting room and only distributes to other states. So
Right.
we'd still love to chat with you and keep you on the list and see where you fit in long term. There might be other things. You're shipping to Oregon, you're shipping to Washington. Like, let's talk now, because it will take a collaborative effort. Like, this is not just Revino. This is us and our label partners and our glass manufacturer and the whole supply chain that we're kind of bringing to the table to see these benefits. And then, really, if you're one of those bigger brands too, start engaging on these policies, and start
Yeah.
advocating too, because this is what can save you money long term. And it's hard to engage in everything all the time. So that's
Right.
I'm really realistic about that. But we ask that you come to the table and have a conversation and say, like, what where does this look like it's in your portfolio? Is it now? Is it 2 years from now? What changes can you make now to be ready to eventually do this, or even support us on the sidelines, to support reuse on the sidelines? Maybe it's just connect us with a distributor who's super jazzed about sustainability efforts. Talk about this with your local wine club members. Start to feel out what it's like for you as a stakeholder in the industry, um, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. And then, as I mentioned, we're kind of trying to pull together a convening to really discuss the opportunities and the difficult portions here, the infrastructure. How do we see this growing long term? Uh, and so we'd love to have people come join us at that. Details are still very much up in the air. So, reach out, and we'd love to engage with you.
Well, that's great. I mean, it sounds like for sure if you are in Oregon, you should talk to Adam. It sounds like if you're in Oregon and some significant portion of your sales is DTC, you should definitely talk to Adam.
100%.
um, and then everyone else should talk to Adam as well. Just give him some time to talk
Oh
to all
my
those other
gosh.
people first, and then reach out to him.
Yeah.
uh,
With a caveat, we are busy, but I would still love to chat with everybody.
right,
And
right,
and some of this is a longer term conversation for a lot of brands,
yeah,
because things move so slowly. Because so it's just start engaging now. And the
yeah.
fun thing is, this is global. I mean, we wine is kind of teed up for this. We're in glass packaging. We save money by using our bottles because they're more expensive compared to, like, beer, which is cheap, and cans are just as cheap, or an alternative that is preferred by the market in some ways. So if we want to stay in glass, this is our opportunity to really reconnect with customers as well. Think about the benefits that you get when you can engage that customer to hold the bottle one more time, to look at the back, to come back to a tasting room, versus just like throw it away and go back to the grocery store and get whatever cheap bottle looks
That's a
prettiest.
really good point. Oh, that's a great point. Yeah.
And this is global too. I mean, they're making big movements towards reusables
I mean,
across the beverage market in Europe. Um, and we are
uh,
collaborating with a few brands that are just like us in other markets, who have the same problem. They need the standardization, and the hard part is when those bottles leave, you know, the market, they aren't going to be reused. So we're actually having these discussions about what would it look like to have a standardized wine bottle overseas. So when we import the Burgundy, the one of my favorite wines is Muscadet, from
oh,
Cergy.
nice. Uh
Uh,
huh.
I'm still gonna drink that. Like,
So you
I'd
might as
love to
well have it in a
support.
bottle you can reuse here too, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And then
Yeah.
then it opens up our markets as well.
Yeah.
We have to get on board with the markets in overseas. We have to align with their standards. So that right now, that means the lightweight bottles sometimes, um, and it might mean reuse in the future as well. So think about this as both an opportunity, a business opportunity, but an opportunity to reconnect with customers, like to tell the story of wine, which is such a natural product, It comes from a vineyard. We should be leading in the beverage space this move towards more natural foods. Instead, we're
Well,
getting all these functional beverages with mushrooms and additives from 100 different countries, and they're sold as the most healthy thing for us.
I
We can
well
counter
I
that.
I love. I mean, I love that. I love that this. Just to draw out that point that you made, which was, when you set up for people who come to the tasting room, for example, and that are local people who can bring those bottles back. Every time they come back is another touch point of a sale point potentially. Not that, like, we're trying to force wine down people's throats, but like every chance you get to connect with somebody helps you, and having them have a great like a reason that's part of a sustainability story to come back to you is just like an added bonus. It's almost like maybe they're going to come back anyway, but like now you've given them an incentive aspect as well as, hey, I'm going to be swinging by anyway. It's just, yeah, like more connection with the people that are drinking your wine
Yeah.
seems like a positive thing, especially if you can figure out a positive way to make that a fun experience, to make that a valuable experience for your customers, to make that a meaningful experience for your customers. You're just adding layers of potential,
Yeah.
um,
Pe- we want
connectivity
people to
and
feel good about
yeah,
drinking wine.
yeah,
And
it's great.
it's hard to hold attention right now, right? Like
Yeah,
everyone's on their phones and it's 30 seconds. I don't know. Now the social media changes our recommendations on, as brands change all the time on how long your video should be and what platforms you pitch on. But like the physical still is something that digital can never give us.
yeah,
Um,
and I'm just saying, any of you big brands who are maybe really have the wherewithal to create a position for a wine man. I know somebody who's who would take that job in a heartbeat.
I'll keep that in mind, like the home
You set
delivery,
up a
that's also
little,
a
like,
thing.
some like, what's the, like, King Estate, what's the big one there,
Yeah,
and
they're up
that's
here in Oregon.
yeah, they're like, yeah, they could have, they've got enough. They could set up some local delivery there, like regular local delivery. They might need somebody to manage that. I'm just saying, pick up the
I'll
old bottles, bring in I'm just
next
saying,
time I
just
next
saying.
time I reach out to the King Estate team, I'll say there's a wine man. He wants to be your wine man, and they'll say what? Listen to the podcast.
Well, cool. What did I miss? I mean, obviously we jumped all over, so if there's anything you
Oh
want
yeah,
to
I
dive
hope.
back into or anything at all, I just, if there's anything I missed as well, please say, this is a chance now for you to say
Yeah, I
whatever.
mean, let's say better emissions, better, better. Difficult. We need more infrastructure. I think we kind of hit a lot of the big topics. Hopefully, for those who joined in the first 10 minutes, where we were jumping from topic to topic, enjoyed it enough to stay to where we actually dove in. But um,
I
I
will
think
encourage people to stay to the end in the intro to this.
yeah, I think this is just like an evolving conversation. We're not going to get this right as Revino every time, just like every other brand. So, keep engaged with us, keep giving us feedback from the market. If you're a consumer out there, like go tell your local wine brands about it. About reuse, just ask them what they're doing in their space. They don't need to join our program, but start thinking about like what packaging is. Start talking about packaging. It's the thing that we don't talk about, uh, and it's something that I think there's a real opportunity behind it to connect and engage and kind of bring back that the thing that we're all yearning for a little bit more, which is that connectivity, the physical, the tactile, and that's where I've been diving in recently. Is just I want less screen time, and if this is a
Yeah,
component for me to get that, let's lean into that. But in the meantime, just keep enjoying good local wines and supporting the people that are making the right decisions, because that's the way. The small changes at every level make an impact, and that's the part that's easy to lose track of. So
that's great. I hear you saying be kind, be engaging, and be a partner in creating solutions.
yeah, and I think it's in my email signature, but it's a quote from the Lorax. I love it. I live my life by it, but it's unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not.
Yeah,
So
I
keep
like that.
making small changes where you are. Um, Keep going with the podcast. I've been loving listening. So, although my time to listen to every episode is not there anymore, but
Well,
it's
thank
been
you.
fun.
Thanks, Adam. Thank you so much. Yeah, I tried to make this a little silly on my end so we can talk about the technical stuff of this, but I hope everybody gets the importance as well as the just the cool stuff that you're doing and the fact that it's getting done. It's happening, and we can
Slowly
be
but
part of it.
surely. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the time. So.
Hey, thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much for supporting those of you who subscribe and share and make it possible for me to continue to do this. I really appreciate it. And if you'd like to support, you can easily do that by subscribing at beyondorganicwine.substack.com. Thank you so much, and a big thanks to Colden Pro for some beautiful new closing music.